down, because that's the rate at which you discount future cash flows. So those cash flows are worth less now. So 4.114, it went down by about 50 cents, a little bit more than that. You're probably thinking it's not by much, but one thing you don't know about these, a lot of bond portfolios for the banks, especially for the traders, are highly leveraged. Because if I buy a bond and pay $981, I typically need to fund it from somewhere, right? In some cases, you fund them using the depositor's money. In some cases, you fund them with what we call overnight repo, which is short for repurchase agreement. It's basically a fancy term for borrowing overnight using the bond itself as a collateral. So I take this bond, I go to the bank and I say, please lend me $980.57. I'm going to leave this bond to you as a collateral, but tomorrow I'm going to buy this bond back from you at a very specified rate. Oddly enough, the difference between the two is interest rate for borrowing for one night. Okay? That's what a repo is. Sometimes you do weekly repo. Whenever, for example, Fed borrows or lends money to the banking system, they always do it in the repo market. If they wanted to make sure that there is less money in the market, they go into the repo market. They actually borrow money in the repo market. They borrow money and they buy the bonds with it. Okay? And next day, obviously, they refinance it. Now, okay, in this case, we know that. Suppose I told you what the value of the bond was, and I want you to figure out what the yield to maturity is. Okay? And let's say it's 1020. And let's make that properly formatted. Not that it matters, it just bothers me when I see a money amount not have a dollar sign in front of it. So how do you think I'm going to figure that out? I tell you what the bond is worth. Coupon rate, face value, coupon frequency, and number of years is fixed at issue. I mean, number of years obviously changes over time, but coupon rate is fixed at issue. So how do you think I'm going to determine yield to maturity? This is not too different from things we have done with annuities. In fact, mathematically speaking, a bond is an annuity with a balloon payment. Do you guys remember how we figured out the implied APR? If I knew what yield to maturity was, can I calculate the bond value? Yes, that's what that bond value number does. If I told you that it was 4%, or if I told you that it was 3%, so I could do kind of a trial and error, right? But I built this spreadsheet or workbook so that you wouldn't have to do that. All I have to do is change my unknown. I know everything but yield to maturity, right? And I was gonna change this. Let me see if this is green light. make that solver mode. I should change this in my template too. Otherwise, make that, I'm gonna call it value mode. Oh, for some reason because it's a table, it repeats the formulas. I chose to call that value mode because when the light is red, I am actually calculating bond value. But if I switch it to solver mode, it automatically calculates it for you. I mean, it does it fast. You don't see it. But it says for that bond's value to be $1,020, given the coupon rate, face value, frequency, and number of years, yield to maturity has to be 363.47. Okay? It's the implied, the rate at which you need to discount to get the bond value. We actually have a function called rate in Excel that would allow you to calculate the same thing. For example, rate. Let me do the function helpers. Number of periods, payment. Here you need to be careful. You actually need to put a negative number. Negative coupon amount. PV is the present value, which is my target value. FV is negative of, where are you? Face value. And this is a per period numbers. So I'm going to multiply it with coupon frequency. Which one is cleaner? Because if you forget that present value and face value should have different signs as far as that function is concerned, as I said, it must have been written by an accountant. They view them as inputs and outputs or debits and credits. But we're finance people, we don't do that sort of stuff. To me, payment is positive. What I pay for it right now is positive as well. But this is much cleaner. Or alternatively, if you want to figure out what the coupon rate needs to be, you can figure that out too. I mean, in our basic finance class, sometimes we figure out, I'm going to tell you the current yield of a bond, but I'm not going to tell you what yield to maturity is. Figure that out. Or then, you could make coupon rate an unknown and go from there. We're not interested in that sort of stuff. I'm going to kind of get us started in a related concept. For the purpose of this class, valuation of bonds and calculating yield to maturity are basically basic arithmetic. Okay? We are more interested in how to measure and manage the risks associated with these. Let me kind of start motivating it. On that online lecture I'm going to do during the break, I'm going to introduce the concept of interest rate risk, measuring that using concept of duration. I'm going to actually develop a little function that's going to calculate that. But I want you to kind of understand where that comes from. And next Wednesday, we're gonna actually use that duration concept to measure and manage the risks of a fixed income portfolio. We're gonna talk about interest rate risk. What do you think I mean by that? When I say stock market risk, you understand that. If the stock market goes up, you make money. If it goes down, you lose money, right? But if you have a bond portfolio that may or may not have, multiple bonds in it with different maturities, what happens if interest rates go up? Every bond that you have goes down in value, but sometimes you're short bonds. If you're short means you borrow somebody else's bonds, you sell them in the market, put the proceeds into your bank, earn interest, and later on, when the price of the bond goes down, buy it back using the funds you have in the bank and pay back your bond loan. That's actually the other end of a repurchase agreement, right? Essentially.